Okay, and welcome back to Zonk TV. I'm Andrew Weir, and in this tutorial we're going to look over blueprints in Unreal 4.9. There's a lot of tutorials on blueprints across YouTube, so I'd suggest watching the ones on the Unreal channel. But this one's generally going over an introduction to blueprints. Not the interface of Unreal, because that's pretty standard throughout Unreal, but I'm going to look into a few areas, make a few basic blueprints, and rather than just say this is how you make a door move, I'm going to try and explain what the nodes do and how they can then be or what the steps do to get a door to move or something like that, or get something to move, and that way you can use the different things that get you to that step in different ways to get different results. So it's not just something you follow and then you can't do much else with it because you can't think your way around how to use it because it's not been explained. So I hope that makes sense, and we're going to start off by actually looking at a blueprint. I'm not sure if I've saved this or not, but if we click on the first person character here, it's actually a blueprint, so we can click on edit blueprint up here on the right, or we can just right click it and hopefully find somewhere here that we can edit it, but I don't like going through all those little menus. Or we can find it actually in its folder, which is the blueprints folder, and we can double click the first person character. But anyway, I'm just going to select it in the scene, which I have, and I'm going to go open blueprint editor so we can start looking at this here. So that opened on my second screen. It's a lot easier if you've got a second screen, but for this tutorial obviously we're filming one screen. And no, I haven't saved it because what I wanted to do with this blueprint, because hopefully you've maybe seen blueprints before, you know that it's similar to the material editor, because basically you've got different coloured stuff, these little boxes called nodes, which are connected by these wires, and we know that it kind of runs left to right, like you're reading or whatever. And certain events get fired off from the red boxes. Hopefully you've looked into programming and stuff as well. You can get things like trigger boxes, or anything like pressed buttons, which is one like input action, which in this case is left click, leading to the event firing off and spawning a projectile, which has its own speed and velocity and stuff. But basically you click the button, Unreal says I've clicked the button, and I'm going to now fire this projectile, and I'm also going to play the sound as well. But what we're going to do is I'm going to delete the sound because I don't want to be, I'm going to be using the first person player or the character to shoot things, and I don't want to have the sound firing off every time I do. So I've deleted it. And there's a few important nodes that we can already see here that I'm going to go through, such as like the branch, but then we need to talk about variables, which we will do. But this is kind of like to see an actual complete blueprint, which is what you should do. You should download projects and look at other people's blueprints and see how they work. For example, looking up and then what's the axis value. We're getting a float value, which is just a number, and then we're timesing that number by all these numbers, and it does certain things. I don't really know what that's doing at this point, but this is a fairly complicated blueprint, and we're going to go for something a little bit more easier from scratch. So what I'm going to do is we're going to have to apply the blueprint to an asset, or we can create a blank blueprint. Personally, whenever I'm making a blueprint, I don't start from scratch. I'll import an item, some OBJ or something like that. For example, this box and sphere. So that was an FBX file, I think. What I'm going to do is drag that into the scene, and at the moment, it's literally nothing. It's just a box and a sphere. So what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to then create a blueprint using this. So the best the best way is the way that we were talking about editing the one here. We've got the edit blueprint button, but since it's just a static mesh, I hit the add blueprint here, and it's going to give us the blueprint folder, and we can create it from there, or we can right click this and go to asset actions and go to create blueprint using this. And let's say I did it with the asset actions create blueprint using this, because if I did, so I do that, it immediately opens the blueprint editor, and what that means is we're now in that separate part of Unreal, just like the material editor, where we can look at all the different parts of our blueprint, because a blueprint can be made out of a few different components, which can be seen in the top left here. So as a static mesh is just what we can see on the screen here. A blueprint can be, if I add more components, for example a point light, a blueprint can be a static mesh and a point light on the same single item that we put into the scene. So for example, if I compile that, we can firstly see that nothing's happened to this here, which is kind of a point that I want to make, because what you can do is you can create a blueprint, have the static mesh in the scene, and it's not the blueprint that we're seeing in the screen, which could be confusing. So that created a new folder up here called blueprints, which I didn't realize, but basically if I drag this one out, that's the blueprint on the right there, and on the left is just the static mesh. So we could actually delete that, or we could have deleted that one and try and replace this with the blueprint. But anyway, I'll delete it and just put a new one in the scene, and we don't actually need that light on the blueprint either. So now that I've opened it again, I'm not in the components viewport, I'm actually on the event graph on these tabs up here. So I'm going to go back to the viewport, and I'm just going to select that lamp, or I could just click it on the component list here and delete it, because we just want this. So when I actually do click on the static mesh here, we get all the same static mesh options on the right here that we would with any other static mesh. For example, physics and well, lighting and anything materials we want to apply to it, and then we get this extra little bit with the events. And as we go to the event graph, we can see there's a few events which are default. And firstly, I'm going to explain what these events do, but we're not actually going to use these ones. We're going to use the onComponent hit event. But anyway, I'm going to put a branch into the scene by just pressing B and left clicking, because this is quite an important node. But alternatively, I could right click and type in branch, and just same thing, but because it's a very common node, I just need to press B, and it gets me a node there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this out. I'm going to try and explain this better. But all these events are now being used, so I can compile this, which is like applying the shader when you would in the material editor. It's just like finalizing that I've made these changes. And if I put this to the side here and I hit play, firstly we're going to see the event begin play fire off, and this line's going to glow like it's working, because we can visually see the blueprint working while we're playing the game. The event begin overlap shouldn't do anything, because that's when things overlap through the object, and we haven't actually got anything that can overlap because it's a solid, or the collision of the object means that I can't. And then event tick, which fires off for each second that we are playing, so that should constantly fire. So we're going to see them both start here, that one goes away, that one doesn't stop, and the other one isn't actually doing anything because nothing's actually overlapping with it. but we're not really going to find any of them useful at the moment, so what I'm going to do is delete all of them, and I'm going to click on my component on the top left here, and I'm going to click on event on component hit. So you can see it's another red node. It's got a few different things on the left of it here, where we can get certain different results from this. I don't really want to go into explaining them too much. Obviously you can hover over them, maybe press Control Alt over certain things. For example, on the right here, on the left even, we can press Control Alt and then see what the functions are and things. But if we hover over these, we can see, well, we can see the names, but they don't really help either if you don't really understand what they're going to do. But anyway, I'm not going to go into them right now. What we're going to do is we're going to pull this the event line out, which is where the event fires from, and then we want to move that box and sphere in the world when we shoot it. So on component hit, which means when something hits it and it's bumped into, I'm going to have it so that the box and sphere move. So at this point, if I was new to blueprints, I wouldn't really know what to type in here, but you can guess that movement's usually called translation or move. So let's type in move, and then we get a lot of different options with everything that says move in it. We're going to look at all the functions which are here, and we get one that says move component to, and that's actually the one we're looking for. But if you were to click on any of the others and try them out and see what they do, then that's just some experimentation, and then you figure it out from there, because from this we can see that we're putting it to move, and then we look down this, we can say stop, return. They're fairly like, obviously you can stop it while it's moving or return it to where it originally moved from. We've got a component, which I'll get to in a second, relative location, ease in and ease out, that's kind of the way the curves work, but I'll ignore that as well. And then over time 0.2, which is quite short, 0.2 seconds. So I'm going to change it to 3 seconds. Compile it, and let's see what happens, because at the moment nothing's going to happen, because I've done it wrong purposefully. I know it said move to 0, 0, 0, but it's not working off local space, it's working off the world space, so it should move to the center of the map, which should be somewhere around here or a little bit below where it is right now. But basically nothing happened, and part of the reason for that is we didn't actually say which component we want to move. So we've got a component list here, and we want to say what do we want to move. So I'm going to drag the static mesh out from the side there, and that gives us the reference, and I can just drag that into the component. Compile, let's try it again, and now it works. If it didn't work, or if stuff's going wrong, it's always a good idea to check if some stuff on the right, or sometimes things aren't set to movable, or at least it used to be like that, and you want to make sure that the static mesh mobility over here of the settings is on movable and not static. So I'm going to try and put it on static now, because that's usually default, and that means nothing's going to happen. So again, select your component, static mesh, move it to movable. But we don't want to move it on the relative location. Well, we don't want to move it on to the location 0, 0, 0 in world space. It would kind of be good to move it upwards, maybe by 200 of where it is currently. But we're still working off world space here, so typing that in is just going to move us 200 up from the center point, which might be more clear if I did put it to 200, compile, and if I move this blueprint away from the center of the map, it's basically always going to go back to the center of the map in 3 seconds. So that can be quite useful if you happen to know a location that you wanted to type in and you want something to always return to it. Then I guess that's how you could do it, but that's not very useful for what we want. So maybe I want to move it upwards 200 from where it is. So I'm going to press 0, and this is where it can get a little bit more confusing, because we're going to need to look into all of the vector variable stuff. So different with all the different colors that we've got here, they refer to different variables, which I'll just take a quick look at right now. Because if I add a new variable, we can see that we've got, if I select this on the side here, we've got Boolean, and we can press Control Alt to see what these do as well. But Boolean by integer, float, name, string, text, vector, rotator, transform, and each of them can be plugged into their color-coded things on the side of every node. So we know that actor references can go into different actor references, but we haven't got any at the moment. Component references can go into components, and vectors can go into vectors, or rotation and transform, because they're fairly similar. Sometimes that's not going to work perfectly, but it's because they all work off 3 points x, y, z, and things like that. But so what we can do is actually, if to start off easier with an introduction to, while we've got that moving to the point 0, 0, 0, what we could do is introduce to the default variable, which is the Boolean, which is true or false, yes or no. Is this going to happen or is it not going to happen? Which is where that important node, the branch, comes in from earlier. So I'm going to type in branch, and because I dragged it out, it's going to immediately put it in the middle of where I was. So I could have done what I did before, which is just pressing B and left click, but then I have to connect that to there and this to there, and that's not what I want to do. Also, with the blueprint editor, it's good to know that you can plug as many things as you want into one node, but you can only plug one thing out of it. So the output's only one, but as many multiple things can go into a node, and then only one thing can come out from the line here, which is useful to know a little bit. But anyway, we've got a condition here, and that's yes or no. And that's not very helpful, because like if it's always yes, then what's the point in having it there? And if it's always no, then it's always going to go through the false. But we can do two things at once. So like, say if this condition's false, I'll move the component to a new location. So let's say move on the Y by, I don't know, 1,000, 100, 1,000. So if the condition's true, it's going to move to the old location, which is 0, 0, 0. If it's false, which I'm going to make this false now, it's going to move to 1,000. So let's watch that and see if it does it, which it should. Which I'm not too sure which way is Y in this world right now, but if we've done that properly, oh yeah, I've got to set the component, just like we did before. And now shoot it, and it's still set to 0.2 seconds, but it's moving to that location, and we'd kind of like it to, well, if I tick on it now, the branch is now going to send the box in the sphere to the center in 3 seconds. So it's doing two different things. And let's say, and now what we can do from that is, well, because that's not very useful, as I say, it's always going to be on or off, because you've got a little tick box and you can't really do much with that. So what we're going to need to do is either promote this to a variable by right clicking, which will create us a new variable and immediately plug it in, which is always probably what we should have done. But if we want to create a new variable, which we have, and let's call it move pass, like move position. So the move position is changing. So that's my logic behind that. But pretty much name it whatever you want. And we drag that out, and we get two options, which is get or set. It's also good to know you can press Control and drag it out, and we get the get, Alt to get the set, or we can just drag it out and select get or set. For this we want get, so I'm going to get it and I'm going to plug it into there, and when we compile this we'll get a default value over here, and the default value is set to false, so we'll constantly still be getting the false move component to here. So what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to I can either tick it on or off, which again isn't very useful because we can't physically change it or do anything to it yet. So maybe if I dragged out from here with Alt, I'll get a new set node. I'll drag out again with another one, and the set node controls what this variable is. So is it true or is it false? And we want to set one of them to true and one of them to false. So basically now we've got like a switch kind of going on, because what we got is if I drag out when it's completed the movement to set this to false, so just making sure I get them the right way around, and when I drag out from this movement to set it to true, that means that I'm just going to change that to 3 seconds as well. That means that now, let's see what happens when I shoot the box in the sphere. So it's going to move to position 1 because the default value was false, but I shoot it again and it's going to move to the other position because it's now been set to false or true. So it's moving to that other position, but now I shoot it again, it's been set to false, so I can shoot it again and it's going to go back to where it came from. So that's like, if it was a door, maybe you press the button the first time and it opens, press the button the second time and it goes back, or anything like that. But that's not very complicated. At the moment also, if I pressed play and we just walk into it, it's going to set it off, which isn't very useful because now I step on it and it's set it off as well. Maybe I just want to shoot it. That's the only way that I can activate it. And what we're going to need is another condition, or we're going to need to tell this event here that the other actor that we want this component to be hit by, and only hit by this, should go for a branch. I'm just going to press B, drag that onto there. So we should go for the branch, and we don't have to do the condition with a variable. What we can do is we can say other actor and hit equals, and we're saying is this other actor equals to some other actor, and that gives us an output of a boolean which says yes or no. So yes or no, have I been hit by this asset, and we want the projectile. So I'm going to type in projectile, and I've got the projectile right there. So that means, are we getting hit by the projectile? Yes or no? Compile. Okay, so now I'm going to shoot it, and we're going to check. Well, actually, I'm going to walk into it and check if it moves or not, and it hasn't moved. So that means we've stopped it from moving whenever anything else hits it, other than hopefully when I shoot it now, it should have got the projectile. But maybe we chose the blueprint, and maybe that's not what's being used. So let's go check projectile. Let's go for the mesh. So when we're getting hit by the mesh, it should move it. and that's not working either. Let's check what's going wrong here. It's the other actor, and we just want the projectile. Maybe we could add the projectile as a variable. Actor. Ah, yeah, okay, I remember now. So I'm trying to get a reference to the actor, but really I want to reference the class. So that was just a little mistake, which I'll keep in the video because it's a simple thing to do. But anyway, I want to get the class of the actor, which probably doesn't make any sense at the moment. So you've got actors, which are specific things within the scene, so there's only one of them, or it has to be referred to one actor, or that's how I understand anyway. And then you've got the class, which can be any asset. For our case, any projectile that we fire, they're all part of the same class. So I'm going to need to go get class and just type in get class, and that converts our actor into the class. And now I can do the same thing that I did before, hit equals, and get the equal class, and then I can do it as a variable, which is external, so I can get rid of that and change it from an actor to projectile. If I type in, I can get it the reference as a class, and I can I can name it projectile. And drag that out and get it as a drag that out, and I'm not sure if that'll work or not, but we'll try it out because hopefully it's referring to the right projectile. So in this case it's not, so what I'm going to do is just delete that and make sure that we definitely get the right thing by typing in projectile here. First person projectile. So sorry about the little mistakes there. I am just pretty much doing this tutorial off the top of my head, but we're going to try that now. And blueprints are a lot of trial and error, so you've got to be patient. But yeah, I knew that was going to work now, because now whenever I walk into it, it's not going to work. Shoot it, and that moves it. And even for a little bit of fun, I might just try and step on it and have it take me wherever I'm going. So that's it's like a moving platform now that's got a trigger. So we can put more components even into this blueprint. Say have a little switch that I need to shoot that's here, so I need to jump on the platform, shoot the switch, and then travel over there or whatever. But yeah, so a little bit more of this blueprint. Let's see what else we can do. And maybe I want this blueprint to only activate after I've shot it a few times. So there's always different ways of doing stuff with blueprints as well. So like I don't know the most. I'm not a programmer. I'm just an artist. I've looked into blueprints quite a bit, but when you do certain things, there's probably like someone's going to comment or say something that's, you know, you can do it better this way, and so it's really helpful if they do. But basically, what I'm going to try and set up now is a function that's going to say how much we've got 5 lives, or you've got to hit this button 5 times for it to then trigger off this event, or maybe we'll just put it on 3 times. But in fact, before I do that, I'm going to make this movement position a little bit more. In fact, no, I won't. I'll do the function thing. So let's create a new function, and then immediately we pop up with a new tab with the function. I'll call it life, although it's really not life. And what we're going to do is we're going to start using a new variable, or we're going to say the input is going to be, because we've got certain things that can go in and out of a variable, out of a function even. We're going to say we can get a float value in through the function. So when I drag this function into this construction, into the event graph, when I drag life out, we're going to see that we've got the float value here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say on the output of it, add a new, and it'll be float as well. So basically at this point I'm also going to have to have an input or something like that. So on the outside of this, let's have a variable called hit, and that's going to be set to a float for the for the input, and we're going to get it, and we're going to put it into there. And basically on the outside of here we're then going to have or on the inside of it maybe, actually we might not even need the output, but I'm going to go into the function, and I'm going to say add, by just typing in the add button, add the float to this. So I'm going to add 1. We probably could have done it without a float. We could have used an integer or something like that, but I'm using a float. We're going to add 1 to it, and then we're going to set, we want to have hit set to this new number, and then we're going to, so we want to put that through the function by dragging that through. So just like we were setting the booleans on and off, we're now setting this this hit float to be +1 for every time that, well, not quite yet, but it's going to say every time that we get hit, add 1, and turn the hit value into an extra one. But anyway, and then we're going to want a branch at this point as well, so an extra branch. Because I say branch is a very useful node for the conditions in which we want things to happen, and what we want is to check if hit is equal, greater than or equal to 3. So if it's greater than or equal to 3, then the condition is true, which means that, and we also want to run this function through the getting hit, so we put that behind the branch. So basically now, yeah, whenever it runs, we're going to say add 1 to the function. I hope this works. And on the third hit it should move. So let's try that out. There we are. Hit it once, hit it twice, hit 3 times, and it moves. And then from then on it should just keep moving, because we've hit it 4 times now. So maybe we want to then, after it's hit 3 times, have a set node for the hit, and just set it back to 0. So basically it's saying, so let's try it again. We'll hit once, hit twice, hit 3 times, and now it's moving to the first position, and then it's not doing it, but I hit it 3 times, it's doing it again, and hit it 3 times, moving back. So that's pretty cool. Fairly useful thing to know. So we can fit things. I think we could have done that all on the outside of the function, but basically we're saying when things get a little bit more complicated, you can do a lot more math than just add 1. So you don't want to just add 1. You could do plenty of stuff like timesing it by, like when things get more complicated. Let's look at the target relative location, and let's try and change that to based off its current position. So maybe I want to set a platform that doesn't move in world space, because currently it's moving between 2 points in world space. What we can do is we can type in get local, or just type in local. Sometimes I just type in local and get the local. Should be one of these somewhere down here. Basically, we just want to get the. We're going to find the local location. So let's type in location. So yeah, get actor location, and that outputs a vector. And if I put that, if I were just to put that into there, then now we wouldn't be moving at all. It's saying move the component to its current location. So what I want to do with that is add a vector to it, which gives me the x, y, z, which we should be familiar with. So let's say I want to move it on the y, like we have been, and then we're going to, well, we will keep it at 0, 0. We'll start at the location that we already have. So I'm going to put that back into there. And then I'm going to put this into here. So one of them is saying move to the location that we're originally at. Oh no, well, it will say its current location. So yeah, we do actually want to minus as well. So I'm going to minus 1000 on the y, and I'm going to add 1000 on the y. We can get a little bit more complicated with this as well, but at the moment let's see what that does. So where is it? There it is. Hit it 3 times, and now it's moving that way on the y, so I know it's going to move a certain distance. Let's just put it like here. Shoot it 3 times, and now it's going to move 1000 in 3 seconds. But now when I shoot it again, it's moving back. Which I think we could get the same result. We can obviously, I've been messing around, so it was more useful earlier on. But we can get the same results by just using the return enter part in here. But I feel like it only returns when it's actually moving. So if it keeps on moving, you can set it to return back to its location that it started moving from. But once it's stopped moving, it's reset to its current location, which, anyway, I found it a bit confusing. And so we got quite a long blueprint there, just messing around. I think the final thing that I want to do is just to mess around with the variable. So let's see. Try and delete these, which doesn't seem to be working. There we go. Delete. Undo that. Delete this. And what I want to do is add a vector. But I want that vector to be a variable, which is going to be a vector. And we'll call that move 2, which will make sense in a minute. And we'll get that. And what we'll do with it is we didn't look at any of the other options that we get on all these different variables, because what we can do is we can make some of them. For example, this branch one here. Now that we've only got one output being used, we know that false is going to do nothing. So what we can do is we can set this to visible by opening the eye here, or we can just click editable up there. And what that does is, now when I select the blueprint, we get these default values. It's called move position, and it's that true or false. So we're dynamically changing it per blueprint, which is very useful. So I've got two of the exact same blueprints in the scene here, except I'm going to tick that box on that one, and so this one's got the box ticked and that one hasn't. So I'm going to shoot this one 3 times and nothing's happened, so clearly that one's not working. Or maybe it's just a still platform that we don't want to do anything with, because these platforms could have some extra stuff on them, like flashing lights that we want to keep, and we don't want to make a whole new blueprint, we just don't want the platform to move. So we've got this other platform which is a moving platform, and when I shoot it 3 times it didn't move, which it should have done. That's because I haven't set up all this move to stuff. Let's just delete that for a second and just prove my point. Getting ahead of myself. Let's move it 300. So now it should move. So that one's moving up 300 on the Z, and this one doesn't move no matter how much I shoot it. So that one should keep moving up. But anyway, that's not what I want to do. What we want to do is get this move to and make this one editable, so we can turn it we can change it within the world. But then also what I want to do is show the 3D widget, which is another setting that I've just ticked. I'm going to hit play, and actually no, I'm not going to hit play. I'm going to look at this here, and we can now see a little move to little thing there. So I'm going to select it, and it appears at the center of the object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it, and I'm going to drag that away to over here, and just so it's a little bit more specific, I'll move it maybe over there and see what happens. So what I'm hoping for this is I'll shoot it and it's going to move to that little star that I moved around, and now it's not going to be able to move anywhere else, but we've dynamically set this to move per blueprint. So I'm going to tick this default value here, I'm going to select the new move to thing, and we've got the same blueprint, but we can change per blueprint where we want it to move to different places, which again is useful. Different platforms want to move to different places, different distances or whatever. And then we can always add maths to the move to variable to say like move to different locations, which will change the point of that 3D widget, which means that it can still be used to, I don't know, be a bit more dynamic than just one position per game, per blueprint. And I think that's pretty much what I want to do. I'll right click this and promote it to a variable, which creates the new variable down here, which we immediately can call movement time. And that can be made editable as well, and a good thing to know about that one is that the default value is immediately set to 3 because I right clicked it and it was already set to 3. So default value is 3, but now per blueprint I can say move over in 10 seconds, and this one to say move over in 1 second. So depending on the distance, this one's going to move really slowly now, and that one's going to move really quickly. So I know it's all dynamic. It's pretty cool. So I know I didn't go over anything very specific, but as I say, it was random stuff that's very useful to learn with blueprints that can be applied to different areas to get different effects. This was my first Unreal tutorial, I think. Maybe I've done one before, I'm not sure. But if you liked it, give me a like, tell me what else you want to learn to do with blueprints, materials. I've been looking into like procedural stuff, so maybe I could do tutorials on that. And I thank you for watching. I know it was quite a long video, but it was hopefully worth it, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.